Before we go back to the project, let's have a final look at our good old Power BI Desktop workflow. You learned that we moved on to the data model in the last module, but in this specific module, we'll leave the data and model view and dive into the report view. As mentioned, in this report view, it's all about data visualization. This means now we'll use the data we prepared in the last modules and apply this prepared data to create reports with multiple visuals. As you can see it here, we of course are not limited to creating single visuals. We can create many visuals, and all these visuals tied together are called a report. So this is the last step in the Power BI Desktop workflow, but before we create our visuals, let's also have a look at some basic visual elements. Of course, we have many different visual types available in Power BI Desktop. Therefore, the elements I'm showing you right here now are not a comprehensive overview, but it's just a core idea to understand how we can interact with the fields, so the columns, so to say, and the elements a visual contains. For this, we'll have a look at a basic visual. Here we have two axes, the X and Y axis in this case, but depending on the visual type, you might have the so-called axis element here inside your visual. Just for reference, here I'm back in the course project, which you can find attached to this lecture also. And in this project, if I go back to page 1 here, for example, and select our chart that we created, then axis here, for example, where you also get some additional information when hovering over the name. So this axis, legend, and values, well, names here, are the visual elements I'm referring to. Here we have the fields. So you could have an axis element, and to this axis element, you could add the field that contains the different years. For example, here in our population project. So you add the year field to the axis element inside your visual. This is of course nice, but just adding the years here doesn't add any, well, visual or any data to your visual, so you need underlying so-called values for your visual. Value or values are another element of many different visual types, and a typical value here could be, for example, the population count for the different years that we have in our data. Having a simple line chart like this is nice, of course, but you might want to get some more insights into your data, and for this you could add another field to another element of the visual. Here the element could be the so-called legend. The legend, in this little example here, could, for example, add 2 additional lines to our line chart, and these 2 lines add up to this white line above, because in addition to the white line that contains the total population count, the orange line gives us the numbers of the German population, and the purple line gives us the numbers of the American population. These are just some, well, example data here, of course. So this is the legend element inside a visual. It helps us to gain more insights to your data, to present the data in a more granular way. Besides axis, value, and legend, a final, very common element of visuals are so-called tooltips. A tooltip is not displayed by default in a visual. A tooltip is only visible if I hover over a certain area of the line chart here, for example. Here the tooltip could contain our age category field and therefore give us back the share of a specific age category, here in the example senior with 32%. So with the tooltip, we can add information to a visual if the user hovers to a certain area of the chart as he or she wants to gain more insights into the data. So these are our basic visual elements and how these tie together with our fields that we created. But now is the time to leave the theory, for the entire module by the way, and to go back to our project.